Alright, let's climb to 3,500.
3,000, climbing to 3,500.
You need more right rudder.
Are you sure?
We all need right rudder to climb, and listen to your CFI, it's going to save you some time.
Right Rudder Marketing. We're pilots who help flight schools grow. Let's train more pilots.
The little tour clear one is like
My friend.
All right, Maisha, take one.
sorry. Okay, 1, 2.
Good, keep coming down.
A little bit more.
Alright, let's climb to 3,500.
3,000, climbing to 3,500.
You need more right rudder.
Are you sure?
We all need right rudder to climb, and listen to your CFI, it's going to save you some time.
Right Rudder Marketing. We're pilots who help flight schools grow. Let's train more pilots.
The little tour clear one is like
My friend.
All right, Maisha, take one.
sorry. Okay, 1, 2.
Good, keep coming down.
A little bit more.
Alright, let's climb to 3,500.
3,000, climbing to 3,500.
You need more right rudder.
Are you sure?
We all need right rudder to climb, and listen to your CFI, it's going to save you some time.
Right Rudder Marketing. We're pilots who help flight schools grow. Let's train more pilots.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Aviation Business Podcast. My name is Tim Jedrick. I'm the owner of Right Rudder Marketing. We have a special episode for you guys today. Today we have NFTA. So NFTA is the National Flight Training Alliance. They are a great organization, and they're really trying to help the aviation industry. And alongside me, we have Sebastian. Sebastian is part of the Right Rudder Marketing team over there. He's been kind of talking to them in the past few months and really fostering relationships, so I wanted to bring him along as well. He's been doing some great work with our sales and marketing team as well, and he's been, prior to that, he was also one of our account managers and helped work with our flight school partners. So Sebastian, welcome to the show, and yeah, tell us about what's going on with NFTA.
Thanks so much, Tim. Yeah, so thanks for having me on. NFTA, National Flight Training Alliance, is obviously doing a lot of really great work when it comes to modernization of Part 141 schools, working directly with the FAA to kind of solve some issues that we're seeing in the flight training space, as well as other really great topics like, for instance, allowing student pilots to access funding through 529C accounts, which previously wasn't possible and went into effect recently, and a whole host of other things. I don't want to put too many words into their mouth because they could probably say it a whole lot better than me. But like Tim said, we've been fostering a relationship recently, seeing each other at the trade shows and at EAA Oshkosh, and we said, hey, why don't we just make it official and kick off this partnership with a podcast so that we can really talk about your message, about everything that you are doing to benefit what essentially is our client base, right? Flight schools, we want the best for them. We want their voice to be heard by people in the FAA, by members of Congress, just to make sure that we can tackle some of the latent issues that we see in this space and ultimately train more pilots. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Lee, Paul, Katie, and Kat. If we could just get a round of quick introductions and sort of how you guys came to be involved with NFTA and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Maybe we can kick it off with Mr. Lee Collins.
He's on mute over there.
There we go. They kicked off my audio during the preset. Yeah, Lee Collins. I'm currently the president and CEO of National Flight Training Alliance. We are headquartered at 600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. We also have remote offices in Southwest Florida, and most of our board members and staff are located across the country. So we've got a wide footprint depending on where we are at any one time. And I've been here since the beginning. I was part of the consulting group hired to start NFTA by a group of forward-thinking and very interested flight school owners around the country who wanted to chart a better future for flight training. They were frustrated with where they were presently and wanted to take the reins themselves. So we're really happy to be here.
Thanks so much. How about we go to Paul? Oh, I think you're on mute there as well. Sorry, like Lee said.
All of us got muted.
At the bottom left, there should be a little microphone icon that says audio. Maybe it's crossed out and red. When you click on that one, you should unmute yourself. Not yet. No worries, guys. As we are just recording and not live, we can definitely cut this part out, no problem. Paul, do you see the toolbar with the icons at the bottom? Like where it says share, video, audio? Okay. And you clicked it and unmuted yourself? Oh, you did. And we still can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I wonder if your browser asked you for permission to do that. Oh.
He's logging off and back on. So we'll see.
Okay, no worries. We can keep going with the introductions here, so thank you, Sebastian. How about Katie and Kat over there?
Hi, my name is Katie Braddock. I'm part of the National Flight Training Alliance. I met Lee Collins about a year and a half ago in my Embry-Riddle classroom. Since then, I've become the Director of Executive Operations at NFTA, and I've graduated from Embry-Riddle, and I'm currently working my CFI at Paragon Flight. I hope my aspirations are for the airlines.
My name is Kat Stein. I met Katie Braddock at Embry-Riddle, and she introduced me to a little bit of what the National Flight Training Alliance was working on, and I kind of immediately took interest in it. And through her, I got in touch with Lee, and I'm now an executive assistant at the National Flight Training Alliance. I'm currently a full-time flight instructor at Paragon Flight Training Co. And so those two sides of what I do for work kind of join together. One is the immediate hands-on work with the students, and then the other is trying to better the industry as a whole.
Nice to meet you both. Paul's joined us again, although I'm not sure I see the audio icon.
Yeah, it's giving me a pop-up here. It says Paul's browser doesn't allow recording, so there's something going on with this browser. Maybe try accessing it on Chrome or another thing like that. But yeah, it's something's going on with your browser over there, Paul. So you can't connect to your audio or we see the video, but we don't hear you, Paul. Okay. So anyway, we can continue on here. So one of the biggest things that I think as a topic for NFTA has been this 141 Modernization Act. So that's something that has been really hit in the press recently. I remember being at Aero Summit, and there was kind of this small discussion about this is back in I think May or something like that. There's this discussion about the 141 Modernization Act and kind of the I guess proposal, or I don't know what the right legal terms are for this, but it was kind of submitted to I believe Congress or the House, and a lot of things happened from that. So that's kind of I want to start that conversation with that. And yeah, talk us through about some of the changes that are coming down the pipe for flight schools and our industry.
Well, first of all, it's not an act. It's not a legislative vehicle. A little bit of background. The industry had been calling for a number of years for a complete rewrite of Part 141, and there was an effort underway in the previous version of the FAA reauthorization bill of 2024. During that writing in 2023, we had language in the bill that would have mandated by legislation this update. However, as we got close to the spring of 2024, there was a proposal made by the FAA to do it via another means, which might have helped the process and shortened the length of time that these things normally take, because they can be at the fastest, the quickest, 2.5 years, generally something like 5 years, which is a long time on a project like this. So rather than go down the legislative route, we did meet with the FAA. We were asked by them to be their industry co-lead and co-partner in developing a series of industry-wide listening sessions that would go around the country and gather together people in the flight training space, whether they were schools or academies or universities or people who had sort of ancillary ties to the industry and wanted to see a healthier, stronger, more efficient technological future charted forward. And so we partnered with the FAA in 2025 to do that. The process was undertook during the fall of 2024, but the meetings in earnest were during the first quarter of 2025. We set upon a year-long process of monthly meetings and quarterly meetings around the country. And at the end of that time, we produced, along with over 200 participants from the industry attending those meetings, we produced a 471-page comprehensive report that recommended the changes necessary for the 141 and flight training space that would produce better pilots, cheaper, more efficiently, and make it easier for flight school operators to understand the rules and not have a complicated system, which is what has typically frustrated so many flight training providers about the 141 process. So we now have that report in the hands of the FAA. It was submitted to the administrator on April 1st, and we have socialized that report now for about 4 months, and we're coming shortly to the time where a decision is going to have to be made what to do. And we are anxiously awaiting. There has been some discussion, some smoke rising from the chimney, as it were, to give us an indication as to where it might go, but we really won't know in earnest for another couple of weeks, maybe the end of September. But yeah, that's the genesis of what we did and why.
Wow, it's coming up pretty soon, so it's in a few, I guess, weeks or something like that. Maybe you'll have the answer to this. I think Paul Prediker is back on here. Are you able to talk, or
are we?
Yes, we can. We can hear you. Congratulations. There you go.
What's amazing is they let me fly airplanes too.
No worries, man. So yeah, I've met you a few times, especially during your time at National Association of Flight Instructors. Give us a quick introduction about what you do, where you came from, and also your involvement with NFTA.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for your patience. Tim, we see each other from time to time at shows, so it's nice to see you in this venue. You know, we appreciate being here. You, you know, as you alluded to, I was president of NAFI up until, well, the end of last year, but I kind of stayed on in an advisory capacity until the end of June, just to kind of help with the transition, you know, to a new person. And I reached out to Lee early in 2025 as, you know, we became aware of putting together the 141 project, and I wanted to be a part of that. I missed Lee's introductory comments, but I mean, if this hasn't been said, I just, you know, want to go ahead and say it, and that is the regulations, you know, have not been touched in a long time for flight training. And, you know, the last time they were looked at, some of the technology that was available to us now was not available then. And I thought, you know, it would be an absolute shame if we cannot leverage new technology to help improve flight training. And, you know, NAFI was really focused, you know, on the 61 level. And it's a very important part of the, you know, the flight training industry. It's about 65% of all the output for flight training. But, you know, the flight schools, we saw opportunities for improvement, wanted to be a part of that. And as Lee, you know, was saying, we've got to report into the FAA. We're anxiously awaiting the next step.
Okay, so I would actually love to ask a couple follow-up questions, one for Lee and one for Paul, based on what you guys said so far. Lee, you mentioned that you guys have done all this work, right, that's culminating in September on the modernization of Part 141 flight training organizations to sort of address their frustrations. I would love to go into a little bit more detail about like what the content of these frustrations is.
The very first meeting, the agenda for the first two-day meeting that we had in Atlanta in April of 2025 was around what we call pain points. Why do flight schools resist going into the 141 world? What is it about it that is so frustrating to them? And of course, it was highly illuminating. We thought we knew what those pain points were. There were more than we could have ever thought of. I think it was illuminating for the FAA, who was in the room, to hear that. But it really centers around inefficiency and the inability to really move in real time to conduct safer flight operations based upon knowledge and data collection and all of the things that happen within the day-to-day work of a flight training provider. And so many schools would just say, hey, you know, I can do better on my own. I don't need the government in here watching the whole thing. I'll be out here as part of the, you know, the Wild West, what we call the 61 world. Barely 30% of the flight training in America is seen by the feds. And I think there is a need, both of us, both sides of the coin would be better served if that number was higher. It should be. And so we set out with some major goals for this effort, for this report, and the most important of which was incentivize participation. Write a new rule that makes it easier for a flight training provider to run his or her operation, that would incentivize them to have a more streamlined operation, one that is leveraging new technology, and one that is forward-facing into the future so that we don't get into this every 30 or 40 years being archaic and dinosaur-like again and then having to rewrite a whole new rule. And so I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is many 61 providers are going to see, hey, this is going to be efficient. One of the first recommendations was the development of a central management office to handle all of the day-to-day operations of a 141 certificate, either initial issuance or ongoing recurrent upkeep of that certificate. So having experts in that space in the FAA who were monitoring that and handling that for the flight schools should ease that. And most people, even in the congressional level that look at our report, go, you know, the CMO piece, recommendation number one, probably takes care of 70% of the problems, and we believe it does. So at some way or another, that one piece is going to happen, at the very least.
Why?
I mean, we've all seen this and heard this in the industry. Yeah. Sorry, we've seen this and heard this in the industry. From one FSDO to another, there is local interpretations, and when it comes to managing 141, we kept hearing the same thing about how one FSDO would interpret the processes and procedures differently than another one, and that just adds to frustration, for the customer. So, as Lee said, trying to get a central management office to oversee this and kind of standardize the processes is a big step forward.
Sebastian, keep this in mind too. They farm this work out to the FSDO operations across the country, who by their own admission probably have 50 to 60 different things they're responsible for handling within the scope of their office geographically. Handling a flight school's day-to-day operation under the present system in a present scenario is very low, if not towards the bottom of the totem pole. They get around to it when they get around to it. So an operator who might put in a request for an application or a change to an existing certificate not only should plan to wait months, as we know from previous conversations, can actually wait years. And that can't happen. That's not the kind of efficient industry we should have in this country. If we seek to say that we're global leaders in flight training, then that can't happen anymore. So we're not going to make any indictments of their system. Their system is what it is, but what they can do is at least create a separate office that will handle nothing but these operations. And fortunately, you can at least cut down the time delay, because this will be the only thing these people are focused on doing. They won't have 50 to 60 different job class type of assignments that they're responsible for within their FSDO.
You had mentioned, so right before we were going live with this recording here, I had mentioned that one of our flight school partners over in Dayton Aviation, they had tried to get their 141 for a bit, and they had some troubles. And then I think you said you had a binder behind you full of like all this stuff here, because exactly this reason. The FSDOs are their own segment, and I think what you're trying to do with this, we call it the CMO, I suppose, Central Management Office. They're trying to bring it, I guess, centralized for this one purpose. Am I understanding this right?
Absolutely.
What were some of the challenges that, I don't know if Dayton is, kind of the best example of this, but what are some of the challenges that they faced in the past to get their 141?
Paul, you want to grab that one? Or, I mean, I can talk about some, but maybe Paul knows a few.
I think, at kind of a high level, just trying to understand the process, and, needing an advocate or a mentor to kind of help work through the entire process. I'm familiar with a colleague of mine at a flight school in Pennsylvania, and she, like our friend in Dayton, has been trying for I think three and a half years to become 141 certified. And it's important to their operation, it's important to their business, and they made an application early on, and they made an administrative mistake in their application. They were given the opportunity to resubmit, but they put them at the bottom of the list. And there's 169 applications above them now that have to be approved before they'll get approved. And at the rate they're approving 141 schools, it's not happening overnight. So again, I think just having some sort of a central office where there's a single source of information would really help. But we constantly heard about just administrative backlogs, trying to get the right answers, simple things like why does it require, FSDO level approval for us to, make a small change to our training course outline? Why can't we just do that locally? So Lee, and there's certainly others, but that was the big thing we heard.
Totally.
The other thing too, Sebastian, and Tim, to you as well, they will admit that they are significantly under-resourced, both in people and money. Say, okay, that's between you and Congress. You guys will have to figure that out. You'll have to build a better system. But in the meantime, our industry can no longer just be held captive because our government, can't put together a system that works. So this industry has to develop the efficiencies that allow us to keep plowing forward. And maybe one day they'll catch up to the train. But that's really the biggest piece of this, is that when you look around and see the people who are doing the most innovative space in training aren't even involved in 141 at all. And why? They say, I can't wait to slow down for a year or two. I will be a dinosaur to my competitors if I'm sitting around waiting for 2 years before I can innovate. I got to be innovating weekly, monthly, forward, all the time.
And we talked about the technology aspect of this. I came out of an airline background. I started in GA. I did 20 years of airline work. And of course, all of our training was in simulators, and that's the standard. The output of training in a simulator is high quality. It occurs every day at the training centers at the airlines. And one of the things that we focused on was not saying that we're going to make a wholesale replacement of airplane training and put everybody in 141 in simulators. Not at all. But allowing a little bit more credit, a small percentage increase in credit for the technology that's in the simulators would make this whole process efficient for not only the school, but for the people going through the program. We hear, and Katie and Kat, you both are in that environment. For an hour of flight time at Embry-Riddle, how much of it were you actually flying versus sitting on the taxiway ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely. We regularly had to cancel for ATC delay on the ground at Riddle, which is very unfortunate, but they have so many aircraft and such little runway.
And then if you do take off to get that lesson done, you're now paying for 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 of just sitting around on the ground waiting.
Yeah. And that just, it personally makes me nuts, because it goes to this whole equation about our current rule about, how much flight time do you need to, get an ATP. And I'm not going to argue whether or not that rule makes sense, but if some of the time that's in your logbook is just sitting on the ground waiting, that's a horrendous waste of resources for the entire industry. And by just adjusting not the hours required, but how we allocate some of the time using a little bit more simulator time would make a lot of sense. We also know of flight schools that are embracing VR, XR, because it makes the transition to the airplane more efficient, but there's no FAA credit for that. Those things need to be addressed.
We can also look at those operations that are typically a little less safe, where we have a lot of risk involved. The FAA will say we're all about mitigating risk. People in the industry say we want to mitigate risk. Well, when we make a modest proposal in this report to increase simulator usage by 18% from hour 0 to 250, because as Paul alluded to, they talk about ATP. I said, I'm not talking about what it takes to be an ATP. I'm talking about what it takes to be a private instrument commercial pilot, period on the back of that. In those 3 courses, increasing simulator usage by about 18% would allow us to be safer in the operation, produce a better, stronger pilot, and I think realize some true efficiency to where we're not seeing pilots that are taking 100 hours to get a private pilot's license. And we're quickly advancing in that direction, where we're already over 85 on a national average. That's not going in the right direction when we supposedly have all of this technology available now in our industry to do it better and smarter, yet we're not.
So from what I'm understanding here is the technology piece of this, modernization 141 thing is increasing the simulator time and really getting the XR, VR headsets to be able to be used.
That's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, there's more to it than that. Yeah, okay. Analyzing technology in a way to make new high-tech classrooms, interactive classrooms, learning modules and ground materials and ground programs that can embrace new AI modules and other things like that to help teach more efficiently. We don't have the capability to do that right now, but we should. It will improve things.
And also, Lee, we addressed there's another part of the technology that we're talking about here that's not about airplane training, but it's about more advanced technology about how a flight school owner and a flight school manager can manage his program with the FAA. That process right now is pretty laborious. There's a lot of paper exchange, and many people on the group are sort of advocating, why do we need to wait for an inspector to look at a small change we've made in our program when we could just put it on a dashboard and say, here's what we've done. So it's also about managing this whole process. is another technological part of it.
So I guess I would like to ask a follow-up question to you both, and thank you for touching on the technology aspect, because I was curious about that ever since your introduction, Paul. Why is it an industry that is kind of resistant to change, as you guys are describing? Like, what makes it so, and what's the mind shift that the industry needs, in your opinion?
For what specifically?
Just in terms of technological progress, whether it be in flight training, whether it be in, utilizing new technology to the greatest extent.
Yeah, I think the industry's there. I think the frustration is they can't go. The folks over on the 61 side are racing down line. Some of your largest 61 operators in the country, like Sierra Charlie Aviation out in Arizona and others, they are right out there on the razor's edge of technology and moving forward. The new pilot-based platform, same thing. But we've got to be able to integrate those into the 141 side, and that is like Paul said, heretofore, a very laborious thing when it shouldn't be. We should all be able to wrap our minds around, you've seen in the reports some development of something called consensus standards, where the industry gets together like they've done now with Mosaic and wrap their mind around what is safe. What does the data indicate is safe, and how do we use that data to support a decision we're making to then change an operational parameter and then go that way, and then continually collect data on the change. And over and over and over, you have this cyclical looking in and looking out of the operation to where we make it safer. As to Paul was alluding, SMS and QMS operations. People say, well, that's laborious, that takes time. Not anymore. No, I mean, you can put together an SMS operation in a week now. We have the technology to do it. Many of these flight school provider, or the folks that do the software for the flight training providers, the platforms they buy, are already in the process of embedding it into their system. It's already going to be there. It's not going to cost these flight training providers a tremendous amount of money to just turn on a module in their software, and now they've got an active SMS QMS operation underway.
For those that don't know, what is a SMS and QMS?
Safety management system and quality management system. And we had some fantastic academics who were on our team. They worked with Paul and others to bring their expertise on what that looks like. In everything we do, a safety management system is where an operator looks at a regulation and says, okay, this is the regulation and this is how we plan to operate. However, if something is to happen and I can't operate according to this regulation, or I need to, for safety reasons, operate differently, there's a matrix we go through, there's a process, and we analyze data that at the end of the day, this process says, yes, we can operate the flight safely, or no, we can't. And if we do, then we do so. And the FAA allows that because they've approved that process. And quality management is just a matter of looking at how do you operate your SMS, and are you operating it according to the way you said you are, and is it providing the results you said it was going to provide? You look at that on a regular basis. We've proposed to develop an industry consensus standards group that would meet annually every year to compile all the data that comes in from all the different sources we will have, to then look at that and say to ourselves, are we getting the result we want for the improvement we're making? And if we don't, then we back out and we try it in a different way. If we are, then keep going.
Well, I love that. I mean, my background actually before I got into aviation was manufacturing as well. And one of the things I focused on was quality management systems. And we had an expression in the industry, at least in the food manufacturing industry, it's say what you do what you say, and then prove it. So it's about making sure you have the documentation in place, making sure you have the SOPs in place, and making sure that you're doing it effectively, and that it's auditable and documented and all that type of stuff. So
you
sounds
probably
like you
remember
went
in
through an ISO
industry.
9000 certification.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, right. That's what Paul just said. You probably ran into those ISO 9000
Yeah,
things.
exactly
This
right.
is that for aviation, okay? It's that
Exactly
for aviation.
right. 100%. One of the things that we were looking at, kind of this 141 report, and I think one of the things, I'm going to switch topics here for a bit, is DPEs. So designated pilot examiners was one of the things that was in the report. I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. I know
Good. You should.
in the past few years, when I go to these trade shows and conferences and meet with a lot of flight school owners and CFIs and even DPEs, it's always a theme there is DPE availability and being able to get schools and their students to be able to get their certificates on time. I've heard horror stories of students going months without an exam. They're already trek ride ready, and they can't get their exam. Even for me, I was finishing my commercial up. We had to postpone it a few months just to because availability, and I'm traveling and all that type of stuff. So there's another aspect of it as well. I don't know if this is part of this, but like self-examining authority was another part that has been brought up to the surface here. Wondering if you can talk a little bit about what are the, I guess, proposed changes and proposed things that you want to do with the DPE.
Absolutely. And Paul and I were talking about this just this morning in another meeting. First of all, examining authority is here, and it's been here since the 1970s. This is not something new. A lot of folks were running around with their hair on fire saying examining authority was going to tear down the industry and it was going to destroy the DPE program. That's a red herring. It's a lost leader out there by people with separate agendas. Examining authority is merely where a school that has a qualified QMS program and is operating at a certain level of efficiency qualifies for doing in-house check rides. And if they do so, the folks in-house that will be doing those would have to be qualified the same as a DPE, have the same background, the same training, and all of the same oversight. So there's that. There's also something new that was offered up and signed into law during the 2024 FAA reauthorization bill, or just after that, the FAA announced they would be starting up what's called the Airman Certification Office of Designated Authority, or ACODA. That's about ready to go live out there, and essentially that will be very similar to what we now have for written tests, where we have these written test centers and anybody can go and take a written test. Well, if you have an ODA, let's say if there was one here in Southwest Florida and you lived an hour away, well, you could call up the ODA that's an hour away and say, hey, I need XYZ check ride somewhere in this date. Can you put me in? And there would be no waiting. It's going to happen. And then finally, you've got the DPE program. And so what we talk about is now we have a three-legged stool. We used to have a pogo stick called the DPE program, and it was very unstable. And that goes to what you were talking about. We didn't have enough of them, and there were even longer delays than what you talked about as little as a few years ago. So that should even out that problem. And between the three of those, we should have a balanced approach to examining and evaluating pilot candidates so that wait times and excessive fees disappear. That last comment about excessive fees is probably why there's a lot of pushback from the organized DPE forum. And of course, I get a chance, because I am one, I can indict that. I can say it without sounding like sour grapes. But there are some people that just see it as a threat to their very profitable business they're running. And unfortunately, we don't have that concern. We're here to protect and advance an industry, not necessarily pad someone's bank account. Sorry to say that, but they don't like to hear it.
I think that's
I'd like to follow up on that a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I've heard the stories too, guys, long time to wait, need more training because, I'm past my sign off time. I need to get more time. It just adds more to the pile. The other thing which really needs to be looked at, and to some extent, this effort about the 141 modernization is trying to kind of address some of these issues, but we know for sure that in certain parts of the country, the pass rate on initial private pilot exams is lower than it used to be. So think about what that means. Somebody is waiting weeks to get an exam. They're unsuccessful on their first attempt. That means they have to be recycled back into the training system to get more training and book another exam.
And wait.
So that only has to happen a few times and magnify that across the country before you start talking about, well, now I see why we're having a DPE availability problem, because it's just, we're doing too much retraining. And what I'm getting at is, everybody can have a bad day on a ride. I get that. Everybody can have a bad day. But if the pass rate is, going down, is it the student or is it the instructor? And I'm making a really strong case for saying instructors need to make sure, whether they're teaching under 61 or 141, they need to make sure they're doing their job and not signing people off who are not ready. And I realize, and there's no secret, that some people become CFIs as a stepping stone to something else. And I hear a lot of criticism about that. And I think as an industry and as ambassadors of the of the industry, we should not criticize anybody for saying, hey, I'm becoming a flight instructor because I needed to build time to go on to something else. We all have our motivations in aviation for doing what we do. But I would say, if you're using this as a stepping stone, fine. But while you're doing it, be the very best you can be, because the industry needs good instructors. And I will tell you, because I've sat in on airline interviews, I used to do them, if somebody comes to you with several failed rides and you're an instructor, you're going to have to answer that during your interview, and it won't be that easy. So, yeah, I get it that people want to be instructors for that reason. We shouldn't criticize. We should just make sure they're the best.
Do you think, I mean, just, because we've been, I think the byproduct of all this in the past few years is accelerated training. So 0 to hero programs, I don't call it pilot mills or whatever, but a lot of flight schools, even some of our schools at Right Rudder Marketing, they really want that 0 to hero type student, accelerated student, and really push them through the pipeline. Do you think that is causing, the lower rates of check ride passes? Because
I think it's a drag on the industry. Yes. Paul and I still have contacts at the airlines, and they're able to go back and look. The data shows the pipelines where these pilots are coming from. What they learn at these puppy mills, they learn to pass the check ride, but they don't necessarily learn how to become competent and skilled aviators. And when you do get to the airline level, it will expose every weakness you have. And I think, those who offer the 0 to hero, lowest cost, lowest in the community, just spend the least amount of money. Well, flying, as in anything else, you're going to get what you pay for. And you need to come out of that first 2 years with a real strong basis of skill, a real good foundation and bedrock. And if you don't, there's no makeup days at the airlines. On day one, sim one, and when you get in and it's your leg to fly, you don't turn around and go, I'm a little rusty. I haven't done this for a while. That's not how it works. You're expected to be as sharp that very first day as you were the day, that you got your rating and got your license. So we have to make sure that does not become sort of the standard in the industry. Fortunately, it's not. It's out there in some regards, but it should not be the standard.
And I guess what would be the kind of ideal scenario for the pilot training pipeline? So as the current industry is, I think a lot of schools, and I don't think it's anything against the schools. I think the reason why they chase the 0 to hero type or the accelerated type program is because the injection of revenue. So you're having a student commit anywhere from like $100,000 in pilot training. The flight school loves that. And I get it from the business side of things too. I mean, we like it too as well. But I'm also concerned about the quality and safety of the product, the byproduct or the end product of this pipeline that we're building.
Mm-hmm. It's a concern, and we see examples across the industry where it's just not in the best interest of those people. They're paying money. What they're getting for that money may or may not lead them to the successful conclusion they want to get to.
And I guess while we're talking about money too, they're paying a lot of money for flight training. One of the things that kind of came from this 141 report as well is 529 account stuff, right? So talk to us a little bit about, and by the way, some context here, I think it came, and this is my knowledge, and I want you to kind of give me the expert knowledge here. What I read about it's something to do with past, I believe last year, the Big Beautiful Bill, they allowed us to use 529 accounts for flight training, but then it's really depending on the financing office, whatever. So if you're Everett Jones or Schwab, whatever, it's really up to them if they want to divvy out that money for you. And then,
completely different. So first of all, the genesis of this was I was walking through a flight training school back in, this would have been probably late 2022. And the finance office person there said, hey, let me ask you a question. How come when these parents come in and talk to us, they ask about using their 529 funds, which are typically set aside through their states for college,
right,
4-year college degrees? Why they can't use them for flight training? I said, I don't know. I'll ask when I get to Washington. And I started asking around. Well, I had worked with a Congressman Collins from Georgia, who's now running for the Senate seat in Georgia as a Republican. He and I had worked together with his staff over the previous years when I was in the airline world on workforce development stuff. I said, I got something for you on workforce development. I'd like for you to run to ground for me. And I said, what? And I told them, they said, oh, that's interesting. We'll run it to ground. Well, I literally was at AirVenture in 2023. I know exactly where I was. I was out in front of, between hangar B and the one, whatever it was next to it, at the A&W stand when my phone went off. And it was Congressman Collins and his chief of staff. He said, we got a deal for you. We're going to write a piece of legislation that's going to make that happen. And we're going to run it through. Well, it took about a year and a half. And then, as you said, in the big, beautiful bill, it was passed, that language. And what they did is they changed the language that the 529 funds can be used, can be drawn from your account, held with the state, not Edward Jones or anybody like that. And you can use it as long as the training is leading to a professional licensure or certificate to include flying. And then when that money comes out, the state sends you a form that you attach to your IRS return next year on your tax return, and that's how that money gets recorded by the IRS. It's helped a lot of people who didn't have the money. They may have had the money left over in their 529 college fund or decided not to go to college, wanted to use this money. It's been a fantastic thing over the last year and a half.
Lee, if I may, I'd love to, now that we've kind of talked at a high level about a lot of the things that you guys have going on, rendering, regulation of 141 schools more dynamic, utilizing the latest technology, a CMO, more frequent examination and less barriers to getting, your check rides scheduled. I'd love to kind of go to Katie and Kat and ask them, from their first person perspective now, what are some of the issues that they've seen during their flight training? What can they say from a first person point of view to kind of substantiate what you guys are talking about in terms of the issues that you want to resolve?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think one of the biggest things is the cost for barrier to entry. Embry-Riddle isn't cheap. I saw a lot of my peers and a lot of people have to take out loans and have to go through that process. And I think the biggest thing is being able to attack that at multiple different ways with the 529 funding, with the simulators that'll reduce the cost of training. And I guess another piece I'm sure we can talk about a little bit is mental health. That's a huge thing that NFTA has been focusing on the last couple of months. We've developed a program called Altitude Allies, which is a peer-to-peer mental health platform, and we'll be launching it nationally very soon. But me and Kat have been working really diligently to develop that platform to be able to reduce the stigma of mental health issues in aviation and allow resources so people can know when to get help and where, and know that that's not going to affect their medical or affect them.
Yeah, I think there's just a big gap of understanding of all the new rules that have been put in place around health and mental health in aviation in general. A lot of people get their information from either older family members or other people in the industry who operated in the flight training world during a time where a lot of this stuff was more career debilitating if it was to come to light. And there's so many more options these days, and we would like to spread that out to the flight training industry so people are more aware of where they can get help and what resources to go to because of that.
And I really want to congratulate both of you for being part of this because, I mean, the industry, I mean, it seems to either run in at max thrust or in full reverse. And when it's at max thrust and there's lots of hiring going on, life's good, right? Everything's good. There's a pipeline. People are coming out of the flight schools to the regionals to the mainline. And then it doesn't take much for all of a sudden that to turn into max thrust with a lot of drag or reverse. And here you are in a program, and we know what the costs are, and now you're wondering, I graduate in 2 years, what will the state of the industry be? And will I be able to teach, instruct, fly? If I had that on my mind every day, that's a big deal. And there has to be some mechanism to, get this out and chat about it.
I couldn't agree more, Paul. I see it in my students, even down to the private pilot level, where they're already worried about their future and their career. And they're putting pressure on themselves to get it done. They're worried about funding, like Katie was talking about. They don't want to have to repeat this lesson. And that ties all the way back into what Paul was saying about not signing up your students until they're ready. But there's that pressure to get it done within that budget of that loan. And then that directly affects the mental health side of things. And I think everything we've talked about in this session is all interconnected in that way.
Very true.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So what would you say to those people who are students, who are operating Part 141 schools, or who elect to stay Part 61 because, to Lee's point, there aren't enough incentives for them to go Part 141? To all of these people who would like to raise their voice kind of and be involved, like, what would you say to them? And that goes for anybody who wants to grab that one.
Well, I mean, I could jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would simply say that aviation is my third career. I've had two completely different careers, and I got a late start. And I would say that it's a wonderful industry. It's the epitome of what a small world is, because they may say it's a global industry, but it is a small world, and there is some comfort in that, and there's the camaraderie of the industry is really a powerful thing. However, the uncertainty, and even if you're at an airline, the uncertainty of your schedule and when will I upgrade and this and that, I mean, it's there. And the thing I had to learn to do when I made the transition from other careers to aviation, it's probably best summed up by, somebody once asked me what my long-range plans were, and I said, dinner. I mean, that was the best I could do, was to say that's my long-range plan, because in this industry, it's pretty hard to project yourself 2 or 3 years in advance, but you're trying to make long-term decisions using short-term data. Mm-hmm. But you have to have that attitude to be able to kind of go with the flow.
Sebastian, from my perspective, first of all, I'll say this. It's a wonderful career field, and I tell people all the time, but it doesn't mean that the industry that they're choosing to go into does not have a responsibility to continually seek to improve itself and to add efficiencies that will help those students coming in, because it doesn't always have to cost as much as it does. It does so because the industry got lazy over time. That's what we're here to address as an organization. I also say to young people when I talk to them, and I say very clearly, first of all, there's a lot of pathways in aviation beyond the airlines. It's not just the airlines. Does the airlines pay a lot of money? Is that got a lot of flash in the pan? Of course, it's always been that way. But then I ask them, well, why are you doing this? Well, I want to make a lot of money. I go, well, if you don't find a way to love aviation, particularly airline aviation, there's not enough money that they're going to be able to pay you to help make you happy, because it is a very hard job. And they look at me somewhat surprisingly, and I go, no, being an airline pilot, they're not paying you all that money because they like you, because in most cases they really don't. They're paying you that money because you are having to give up an awful lot of yourself and your family to do that job. And you have to prepare yourself mentally at the beginning, right now, when you're in private pilot training or instrument commercial, to say, am I capable of doing that, or maybe do I need to look somewhere else to find a place in aviation? You have to be very intentional. And there's a lot of good pathways in aviation beyond the airlines. Great
and
careers.
The role of a mentor in all this is huge, and there's probably not enough of it going on, but there certainly are opportunities for mentorship. When I went to the airline, I was one of 20. I was in the class of 20, and I was the only one without any previous airline experience. I wish somebody had tipped me off into some of the basics, bidding a schedule, how to bid, just the flying part was easy. It was everything else. And it would be good to have some guidance, about, what's the day in the life of an airline pilot. But I agree with Lee. Part 135 operations, some good Part 91 stuff. People make their own choices. Mm-hmm. And I still think today that in this industry, if you want to be in aviation, there's a place for it.
There's a place for it, no doubt.
There's so many different pathways in aviation. I mean, you can take my footsteps too. I mean, like I got into aviation because I was going to go to the airlines, and then rudder marketing came up, and then here I am. So, and I enjoy this. I enjoy, coming home every night to my family, and I'm not abroad all the time, and there's a lot of sacrifice that's involved when you are an airline pilot that I didn't really understand as well until I started talking to airline pilots, until I started being more involved in the industry. You know, I think a lot of times when we're first starting pilot training, we romanticize the idea of being a pilot, but we don't know the full breadth of the responsibilities that's involved in being an airline pilot or, you know, a pilot in general. So really, you know, I think it's so important that when we first start the process of pilot training, we understand what we're going to, and we have to be, like you said, be intentional. We are kind of running low on time here, but there was one topic that kind of got skimmed over, so I do want to go, talk and broach this topic a little bit for you guys here. Katie and Kat, you guys brought up the mental health stuff. So what is NFTA really doing in the mental health realm? I know it's a hot topic for pilots as well. I know that you hear these people, no one wants to report medical issues because they're afraid of losing their certificates and all that type of stuff. That's a very common thread I see with the small pilot communities out there, you know, in the local FBL, they're talking about that stuff. So what are some things that we can do to address the mental health, I don't say crisis, but mental health issue here in the pilot industry?
So Altitude Allies started at Paragon Flight. It was a kind of a test to see how this peer-to-peer mental health platform works at that training level. Before that, there's obviously the airline peer-to-peer platform and the 2024 Reauthorization Act and the Mental Health Aviation Act that both outline what we should do to improve the mental health space at the training level. And so using that model from the airlines, we've developed a platform at Paragon Flight where our instructors wear the green lanyards. Green is the color of mental health awareness, so they're able to identify which instructors they can come and talk to and be visible if there's any issues or if they have some mental health struggle. Those instructors are trained on how to identify what they're going through and how to approach them, and be able to connect them to resources that they need in order to help them through their training, help them through that struggle. We used this model that was developed at Paragon and copied it and brought it to Embry-Riddle. It's been incredibly successful over the last year at Embry-Riddle, and it's grown significantly. It's been really great to see how that's made an impact there. Students are starting to talk about mental health a lot more, have more awareness around it, and it's becoming a little bit more normalized to have that struggle. And also, as a student, it's a lot less intimidating to talk to someone your own age. If you're talking to someone older, going to the conflict sector, it's a huge stigma, unfortunately, that it's going to report to the FAA, or it's going to be somewhat affect your medical or your flying career. Which is just so devastating to hear that if you have some sort of struggle, you're scared to talk to someone because you're going to lose your career. That's really heavy pressure on students, especially our age. And I think a lot of that's been amplified by social media, which is also unfortunate. So,
and that ties right back into what we were talking about with mentorship. I think that fear, like Kitty was saying, is just comes from the unknown, not knowing what's going to happen if you seek help, what's going to happen to your medical, what's going to happen to your career, what's going to happen to your reputation. And having that mentor who is a peer, someone who's similar age, similar state in the industry as you, to help you point you towards the correct resources so that you take away that aspect of the unknown when it comes to seeking help and guidance before you get to a point where you're self-medicating or turning to even worse issues that could arise that could actually compromise your medical. Having that mentor to guide you towards those resources that can help you tackle the issue before it becomes a risk to your career is super important.
Absolutely, and real fast, because I know we're running out of time here, but you touched on earlier, Kat, the interconnectedness of all the things that you guys brought up today, including the mental health aspect. Can you like flesh that idea out a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we talked about how like all those different aspects, like the financial stuff affects your mental health, the pressure and training of the airlines and how the state of the industry is, how quickly you need to get through things. If you get through it quickly, is there even going to be another opportunity to move on to the next stage of the industry? And what Katie and I are trying to do is really help students as student pilots and even like CFIs anywhere in that flight training realm be able to have the tools to navigate those situations early on in the industry. Katie did mention the airlines have peer support programs, but they're very underused and a lot of people aren't even aware of how to access those resources. So creating a normality of having those peer mentors from the beginning of your flight training could create a whole nother culture of mental health awareness and really mental health protection in the industry. And all those things interconnected. Like Katie and I were talking about peer support, but those resources are going to cover everything, including like scholarships, where to find funding for your training in a way that's going to help you not have that extra stress. If you need medical attention for a different condition, who to seek out for that, who's an AME who's going to be supportive and not just instantly flag your application. Mental health, how can you seek help without having to compromise your medical, or what do you actually have to report when you're filling out your MedExpress form?
Very cool, guys.
Awesome.
Lee, Paul, a lot of passion in NFTA. You know, it can be readily felt throughout all the topics that we discussed today. You guys have a lot of positive energy that I can feel that you're bringing to flight training.
We've got a significant number of industry-leading professionals on our board of directors who've been intentionally recruited, and they bring that same level not only of technical expertise but long backgrounds of experience. I'll level their CVs against anybody else in the industry, and again, they are very passionate about this, and they all stand forward. We're going to continue to showcase many of them as we move forward, but every time I pick up the phone to call one of my directors to get some advice on something, I'm talking to somebody who's literally a leader in their field.
And when we look at what Katie and Kat are doing, it's amazing.
Yep.
You know, at this level, for them to be addressing this, doesn't get any better than that.
It's phenomenal.
So we are running low on time here. I really want to appreciate, Lee, Paul, Katie, Kat. Thank you so much for joining on the podcast. Before we end, I always like to give you guys kind of the stage for call to action. So you've talked a lot of good stuff about, the central management office, quality management systems, mental health, the finance aspect of flight training, DPEs. There's a ton of topics here that are impacting our industry day to day. And I think a lot of operators, a lot of flight school operators, they see this as a problem, and they want to address it. So how do we get involved with NFTA? What are some ways to, reach you guys? And if we want to contribute, how do we do that?
So one of the things we're doing right now, if you're a flight school operator or a CFI or even a student that's noticed some frustration, we've got a survey that's being run at the request of our friends up in the U.S. Congress. You can find the link to that survey on our website. Many flight schools have had it sent through organizations like yourselves and others. We just want to encourage people. It's about a 5-minute survey, if that. To get that done, there's about a week left in that window. Your time will have a direct impact. It will not be wasted time because we have significant meetings scheduled around that survey and the results of that survey. As soon as the data is compiled and analyzed, we will be sitting before leaders in both the United States House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. So please take the time to fill out that survey. You can find it on our social media. The girls have done a good job of making sure it's there. It's on our website. Or you can check your inbox because it has been sent around to flight schools through a number of different purveyors. So please do that. If you want to get involved with us, serving on a committee, working on a project, just go to the website, fill out the form. It's free. It'll go to Katie or Catherine One. They'll be back in touch with you and find out what your interests are and where we can fit you in as part of a highly paid volunteer. And we'll be happy to have you with us. And there's always a place. If you hear me at the trade shows, I say there's a room in this tent for everyone and every voice. It's just standing forward and letting us know you exist. So please do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lee. Thank you, Katie, Kat, and Paul. So if you are a flight school operator and you want to participate in this, I had my producer show on the screen here. That's a quick survey. NFTAUS.org is where to go. I think that's the web address to find more information about what the NFTA group is doing. We really want to say thank you to that. Fill that out. Before we end, just, as always, if you're listening to this podcast and you're a flight school owner and need help growing your school, more enrollments, more revenue. That's one of the things that we work on at Right Rudder Marketing. That's our phone number over there, 314-804-1200. You can also check us out at rightruddermarketing.com or send us an email, info@rightruddermarketing.com. Additionally, if you're wanting to come on the show, wanting to talk to us, and you have a mission or a vision or a message you want to show to the world, especially the flight training industry and aviation industry, check out our website, give us a call, give us a message. I'd love to have you on here. I'd love to meet with you guys. We're going to be in, I think, Dallas pretty soon, going to the NAFI Ascend Summit. So if you guys are going there, I'll see you guys. We're also going to be at the King Schools Cruise. And then next year is going to be 2027, and we're going to hit it strong. So super excited for the changes coming into the industry. Thank you so much, Lee, and Paul, and Katie, and Kat for being on this podcast. It's been a great session here, and we're looking forward to continue to work with you and partner with you as well. So thank you guys all for listening to the podcast. We'll see you guys next time.